Well, thank you for Katrina for that nice introduction, and thank you to the Kansas School Nurses Association for inviting me to talk about something I'm very passionate about. And as she alluded, this passion came about from my background in training, first in a dietetics degree, and then I did 4 years thinking I wanted to be a surgeon, and realized how obese children were increasing and making it difficult in healthcare. And then I switched, for my daughter's sake, switched to general pediatrics, and then I really started seeing how unhealthy children eat and how unwell they were. One of my favorite questions to ask my patients is, tell me one fruit and one vegetable you ate yesterday. And I was aghast at the answers I would get, from ketchup and fruit chews to, I even had a 3-year-old that did not know what a vegetable was. So that kind of opened my eyes to literally how big of a problem this is. And that, with all that background together, with that knowledge of nutrition and everything, that's how this became my passion. And this is the thing that breaks my heart for children. I think we all have an area of focus that kind of breaks our heart. And for me, knowing all the nutrition background and what the body needs and seeing how unhealthy children eat, this is the thing that breaks my heart. So thank you for letting me share this with you. I have nothing to disclose. These are the objectives which you guys should have gotten in the course background. And how I'm going to try to reach those objectives is through this overview. First, talking about pediatric obesity, the problem, the solution, some of the barriers, and then some nutrition 101. Because, I don't know about you guys, but in my healthcare training, I did not get a lot of logistics nutrition training. In medical school, we just learned the vitamin deficiencies and overdoses. I really didn't learn what is healthy eating, and so thank goodness for my nutrition degree. So, just kind of sharing some things from my background. And then lastly, going through how we can work together in this fight for healthy children. So what is the problem? So it is one of the biggest problems the world is facing right now. Literally the biggest problem. Our children are getting bigger. In 2012, 1/3 of children were overweight or obese. That means only 2/3 were normal weight. And children are supposed to be our healthiest part of our population. And they're supposed to be able to regulate their intake and their activity. And so, we're doing something wrong as a society. Children who are obese are twice as likely to die by the time they're 55. That means today's children may have a sicker and shorter lifespan than their parents. So we are not progressing, we are actually regressing in health for our children, and that's pretty scary. This is a graph this is 1970 and this is 2008 statistics. Back in 1970, we had about a background rate of 5%, and that had been stable for 100 years of childhood obesity, just kind of a background genetic, Prader-Willi, those kind of things. And that has steadily tripled to our current rate of about 15%. And this doesn't affect everyone the same, as we know. Down here you can see Latino population is twice as likely to be obese than the Caucasian. This has a lot of factors, but it's mainly socioeconomic. It's cheaper and easier to eat unhealthy in America. They have less activity and safe activity opportunities. They're on their screens more because of socioeconomic, and their parents are less educated, which, I have a nutrition degree and an MD, and sometimes it's even hard for me to navigate the grocery store. So I can't imagine, how some of these parents are trying to navigate what is healthy. And these disparities are based on socioeconomic. The minority populations have lower socioeconomic status. And so you see just socioeconomic, this is the bottom fourth of socioeconomic, has the highest rate. The top fourth actually has the lowest rate, and they're actually decreasing their rate of obesity. So there's this huge disparity where this is going up and this is going down. So our efforts, are targeting, are reaching, mostly this because they can afford the healthy food. So we need to work on that as a society. Where does Kansas, where does our middle of the map, where are we? Well, we're right here, and we are red If you look, that's not very good. So this is overweight and obese is 30 to 34.9%. So we've got some room to go as a state. And if you look at 2 to 4-year-olds and 10 to 17-year-olds, we rank 32nd and 31st. Number 1 is the ones with lowest obesity rates. So, you know, this is not a thing where you want to be a high number. So we've got some room to go as a state. And I think policies and stuff need to, you know, be passed to help us with these efforts. So what is overweight and obese in children? So overweight is an excess body weight, and this could be due to fat, muscle mass, water, lots of things. But obesity, by definition, is excess body fat. How do we, you know, we don't do calorimetry on children to try to figure out their exact body fat. So how do we as providers screen for this? Well, we use BMI as a marker, and BMI is weight for height. So it adjusts for how tall they are, because of course, the taller they are, they should have some more body weight. For children, it's age and gender specific, and there's growth charts with percentiles, meaning if you're 90th percentile for your BMI, that means 90% of children have a lower BMI and only 10% have a higher BMI. And so this is what we use, and the CDC has these growth charts on their website. This is for boys age 2 to 20 years. This is the age, and this is the BMI, and so you plot this, and as you can tell, the older they are, you know, they should have a higher BMI, but not too high. So definitions, underweight less than 5%, but there's some children, especially immigrants, that are genetically small, and that's fine. So it's just based on their, how they've grown over time. Normal rate is considered 5 to 84%. Overweight is this BMI between 85 and 94th, and that's just really a red flag to do a physical exam and a history and figure out if that's really due to body weight, or there's just some, I have a hockey player, you know, 6-year-old that's just lean body mass. Whereas if they are over 95th percentile, it's really hard for a child that to be from lean body mass unless they were, you know, with lifting weights or something. So most likely that is due to excess body fat. Why do we care? Why do we care about this excess weight? Well, this excess fat causes a lot of disruptions in the body's processes. We know about heart risk factors, and I went into pediatrics because I didn't want to treat high blood pressure, but unfortunately, I'm treating high blood pressure, as early as 9. So this is a pretty scary thing. High cholesterol. Type 2 diabetes, it used to be that juvenile diabetes was type 1, not anymore. I diagnose a lot of type 2 in children. Bone and joint problems, their bones and their joints aren't meant to hold all that weight yet. Sleep apnea, they're tired during the day because all that soft tissue disrupts their breathing at night. And then, of course, these children do not have the coping mechanisms to deal with the social stigma involved with being larger. And so, this causes a lot of mental problems in children. And students, well, why do you care about this for your students? Well, studies show they have more absent days. They're bullied more. They have depression. They're not, so they can't focus on their work as well. Less friends, and we know how detrimental that can be to a school experience. Not only that, weight bias starts when they're young. There's a survey of teachers, and teachers have a hard job, but I think it's just ingrained in everyone's brain, this stigma, the social perception of these students as untidy, emotional, less likely to succeed, and that translates on later in life. Studies show they're less likely to be hired. And they earn less. So this has huge implications for their future if we can help them out at an earlier age. Also, the majority of them become obese adults. And we know what that does in adults. Diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, and cancer. So as a society, this is a really bad thing. They project if we keep going on this trajectory in 15 years, 50% of adult Americans will be obese. Not to mention the rise in diabetes, heart disease, cancers, economic burden from these medical expenditures, and we don't have a workforce. But but also society. The number one reason that youth cannot join the military is due to overweight or obesity. So, I mean, how are we going to defend ourselves? This is a big, big problem, literally. So knowing that our officials and, our governing bodies and your association who invited me to be here today, and you guys who are, chose this session, know that we can do something. The good news is this is environmental. This is not something that, isn't, fully inherited. This is something we can modify. We can cure this. This is reversible, and there's a goal, and there's some logistics on the CDC's website. The goal is to get back down to this 5% eventually. That is our ultimate goal. So, and there's some logistics on how we can do that. So how did we get to this obesity epidemic? This is, like a plague, it's an epidemic. When a third of people are having this is an epidemic. It's too fast to be genetic. Genetic shifts take thousands of years. So this is environmental. We have become so good at producing food. We are a burden of our own success. We've made food easy and cheap, and lots of it. So it's readily available more than before. And there's an energy imbalance. We've shifted more to a technological, sedentary workforce. So that creates a huge imbalance. If you look, these are numbers from the USDA. This is the rate of overweight and obesity. And we consume, on average, from USDA numbers, about 225 more calories than we did in 1970. But it's not just an excess of calories. Our diet has become very malnourished. If this policy statement from my governing body, the American Academy of Pediatrics, about snacks, sweetened beverages, added sugars, and this is actually a policy statement about the foods that are offered like in vending machines at schools. 30 to 40% of the daily energy of children is consumed as these energy-dense foods, but nutrient-less. And so we're deficient in this standard American diet. The acronym is SAD. So I think that's ironic. This SAD diet has become inadequate in vitamin D, calcium, fiber, magnesium, just to name a few. So our children, are overweight, but inside they're malnourished. This has caused, I think, I'm seeing a lot more chronic disease in my office. 1 out of 10 children now have a chronic disease. And again, I went into pediatrics because I didn't want to have to deal with chronic disease. But here I am. And it's not just obesity and the diabetes and the complications of that. Asthma has doubled. We all know about ADHD, and there's probably multiple environmental factors involved in that, but it's tripled. And I think, like I said, children are unwell nowadays. There's numerous environmental factors causing that, but nutrition is one of them. My governing body, the AAP, has come out with a policy statement and recommendations. And so the following slides, I'm going to present to you how we approach obesity prevention and treatment. And this is their algorithm. First, of course, you have to identify the kids. And so again, that's your BMI. Assessing, that's something I do where I take their family history, I do some labs, I figure out, if they have any comorbidities. Prevention, and that's a community effort. And then treatment, and there's different stages of treatment. And they present this in their thing, and again, I keep coming back, but chronic care model was not something that I wanted to be involved with, but here I am, and so and right smack dab, especially for children in there, is the school environment. They spend a lot of their time in school. And so, this is a whole system effort. I'm kind of over here, but there's, so many other people involved in a children's life. Another way I think we got here is, again, I try to get to the root of the problems, and it looks like since 1970, something has changed. And if you look, I think our values have changed. This kind of illustrates that. This is an advertisement from 1970 for TV dinners. There's an easier way to catch an early show, and one was like, give mom a break, bring home Swanson TV dinners. So we've been told from these consumerism, these companies that, oh, you don't have to have time for that. You don't have time for that. And you don't have to spend all your money on that. Keep your money for the movies or something else. And so, we've kind of been brainwashed to thinking that food, we don't need to spend value food and time and money on that. And so we've gotten away from, food being a nourishment, and now it's a hassle that, we need to do it fast and we need to do it cheap, and so we can use our money for other things. So I think it's a shift with our children. We need to teach them that, to learn cooking is a lost skill, a lost art, and we need to go back to that, to, taking the time to enjoy cooking and enjoy your food and nourish your body. So to me, this is one of the root problems of how America got to this place. And, one thing, and, it's not the school's fault. They just went along with, society, but it's easier and cheaper and more available to have these other kind of foods, these nutrient less but energy dense foods. And at the same time, there's decreased physical activity. There's more technology, and it's more fun, to do that than to go out and play ball anymore. It is, to be honest, it's less safe sometimes. And less time. The biggest thing that we can do is, again, the problem is in the environment, is help shape that environment to make it easier for children. Because children only know what's easy and what tastes good, right? They have no insight into what is healthy for them. So it's our job to give them that insight into what should help them for the future. And studies have shown far-reaching changes that make it easier to be healthy really helps. California prohibited sugar-sweetened beverages at schools. They consumed 150 calories less a day. That's big. Mississippi set nutritional standards for vending machines. The obesity rate went down. So these are things that have results, is changing, making it easier for kids to make healthier choices. Some of the barriers too is that the children themselves have comorbidities we have to work around. Like I said, the asthma rate is raising, exercise-induced asthma. Joint problems, it hurts their knees and their hips with all that extra weight. And depression, it's a cycle. They're obese, they get bullied, and then they just don't feel like doing anything. So it's this cycle of getting them motivated. So one reason why, another barrier, and especially from the healthcare field, why it is hard and why there's so many things out there about what is healthy, what's not healthy, and why it changes is because research on nutrition and environmental stuff is very difficult. Our gold standard of randomized controlled trials is very difficult. There's no placebo, diet. It's very difficult. So we, with research, we do a common sense medicine. If it's proven not to harm and proven likely to do benefit, we suggest it, such as fiber with reducing cholesterol. One caveat and another big barrier here when we do this research is consumerism latches onto this. Like with the fiber bars, he's so sad he's eating a salad. Oh, he's happy, he's eating his fiber bar. And so, there's a better way to get your fiber. So what happens then is, they latch onto this, and was it really the fiber, or was it the fact that they were eating the fruits and vegetables to get that fiber with all the other nutrients in it, and they weren't eating the sugar processed foods? So, that's why this is such a hard field. And I get from so many parents, well, it changes all the time what is healthy, because we are learning, and it's common sense medicine here. For us, another difficult thing, like I alluded to before, the healthcare education has not caught up with this epidemic very quickly. I think it's because they're not testing on nutrition, so the schools don't feel like they have to teach to it. And this bipartisan white paper showed that 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese, but yet only a eighth of medical schools teach about it. And so there's this gap. Can you imagine if 2/3 of people had staph infections and we weren't taught about amoxicillin? I think people think food is innocuous and it doesn't cause disease, and it's not a disease and it's not a treatment, but it is. And so we need to catch up with this, and I think slowly it is. Okay, now on to some kind of pediatric nutrition 101. So this is kind of what I didn't learn in medical school, and thank goodness I had a nutrition degree, the lesson. So again, I like to go back to the root of the problem. And if we go back to 1970, where we had a low baseline overweight and obesity, this was the all-American meal. I asked my dad, what did you eat? Meat, potatoes, and vegetables. That was the all-American meal. Somehow we've shifted to this as the all-American meal. And I'll show you the USDA numbers show that pop, hamburger, and french fries is our all-American meal. And this is USDA consumption of food. So we've decreased our fat consumption, but we've increased our carbohydrates. And remember that extra 225 calories, that mostly comes from carbohydrates and added sweeteners. And of that, 200 of that is high fructose corn syrup. And if you look in 1970, high fructose corn syrup is something humans made. It was not in our diet in 1970. So this is your Coca-Cola. This is your pop with the all-American meal right here. Milk consumption's gone down. Whole milk and dairy fat's gone down, and low-fat milk's gone up. But the problem is we replace that with vegetable oil fats, and that's in your french fries. So there's your french fries right here. And I'll explain later why that's a bad thing. So we are overall consuming less fat, more carbohydrates in the form of high fructose corn syrup, less dairy and saturated fat, but more added trans and omega-6 fats, which I'll show you later. So literally shifted to the all-American meal. So what is healthy eating according to U.S. government? Well, it's a diet low in refined grains, sugar, red meat, moderate in dairy, and high in whole foods, so vegetables, fruit, whole grains, legumes, and nuts. The SAD diet is the exact opposite of that. Low in the things that we should eat and high in the things that we should not. So what is healthy according to my governing body, the American Academy of Pediatrics? Building a healthy balanced plate with a variety of nutrients, appropriate portion size, nutrient-dense foods instead of those energy-dense foods, and balancing calories with activity. Based on that, the AAP rolled out target behaviors for us to target, high yield points for us to make with children. And this is, I numbered it like this because there's a handout that you guys should have available to you. I call it my 6 healthy tips, where I have each one of these, and then I explain each one of them to families. And there's a Spanish version too, if you need. So I'll go through each one of these and kind of explain why this is healthy eating. So portion size. We know, again, we're a burden of our own success. We have more available and cheaper food, so it's easier to eat more, and it has doubled or tripled. So what is a portion size for children? It's about the size of their fist or the palm of their hand. And for processed foods, read labels. A bowl of cereal, a serving of cereal is actually 2/3 cup, but we know children are not eating 2/3 a cup of cereal. So just be mindful and wary of that. Number 2, more nutrient to calorie foods. I call this closer to nature. Which is closer to nature, a bowl of oatmeal with apples or these apple clone things? So that's what I call it, closer to nature. So why is this a problem? Well, highly processed foods are highly processed. There's nutrients taken out as they're processed, and there's stuff added in. So they're lower in nutrients, and they have added trans fats, sodium, and sugar. And even in infant and toddler food. Infants and toddlers really don't care what it tastes like, right? So this leads to an over-desirable taste and over-consumption. The job, these companies is to sell a product, and they're doing a good job of it. But you can't just eat one, and they formulate the sugar and the fat and the salt, so you can't just eat one. So it leads to overconsumption. And why are we adding this to infant and toddler food? Studies show that added sodium and sugar early in life actually changes the taste buds and the perception of taste, and sensitizes the taste buds to sugar and salt, and leads to taste preferences, food choices, and food intake later in life. And I see this. My daughter, since the beginning, has eaten plain oatmeal and broccoli. she'll have friends over and they refuse to eat the broccoli unless I put cheese on it, which is fine. At least they're eating it. Or the oatmeal, I have to doctor it up with tons of brown sugar, because their palate is so used to those supernatural sugar and salt tastes that I'm sure broccoli tastes like dirt to them. Whereas broccoli in its own right has a good taste. And so, I've witnessed this firsthand, that, and we need to keep this in mind, that kids are literally addicted to processed foods. So when we say, you need to eat your vegetables, why aren't you eating your vegetables? Well, it's because they're used to Doritos, and in comparison, that broccoli probably, tastes, like I said, like dirt. So we have to gradually help them change their palate and change their taste buds. So it's literally a pretty long process to get them back to that. Evidence, eating out of the home is associated with more fried food, sugar sweetened drinks, and less nutrients. So, I say when you rely on someone else to make your food, they don't care if they make it healthy or not. They just want to make it cheap and fast. So that's what happens. Family meals is associated with some increased consumption of fruits, vegetables, and dairy foods. So we know if we left the teenagers all day at home, we know what they would eat. So it's important for adults to be present. So what is the solution? Going back to 1970, more family meals in the home, more, togetherness when we eat, and this closer to nature food. And, what's closer to nature, oats, milk, and apple, or this, apple cereal bar with, all of this ingredients. So that's a big thing I try to teach families, closer to nature. How do we teach families how to make meal choices? How do we teach them how to make balanced meals? Well, right now, the problem, we're supposed to eat more of these and less of these, and we're, doing the exact opposite. So the rest of this information, this is Nutrition 101, comes from this book from the AAP. What is a balanced meal? Well, I tell kids, your body uses the food you eat like Legos, breaks it down into little blocks, and it builds your body. It needs certain Legos to build your body. It needs micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, macronutrients, carbohydrates, protein, fats, needs fats. And this is a percentage of energy, and here is grams for a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you look, that's still, it's still a good amount of fat that the body needs. So going into each macronutrient, carbohydrates are sugar, starches, and fiber. They're split into complex and simple carbs. Complex is in its natural form with the fiber, the protein, the vitamins, the minerals. Simple carbs are where humans said, this white starchy stuff tastes good. I'm gonna isolate this and just eat this because it tastes good. So that's our product. Really the only, thing that carbohydrates do for us is energy. There's a small amount if you eat fiber and stuff that the fiber does for your body, but mostly it's for energy. We require relatively little because we convert most things to glucose, but the brain does rely on it, so there's a minimum. Because it's an easy source of energy, this is the recommendation. Okay, I think this is the most misunderstood macronutrient, and fat has gotten a bad rap in the last 30 years. So I'm going to try to dispel some myths about it and try to explain there are different fats. There's good fats and bad fats, and every cell in the body needs fat. And in children, they need fat to develop their growing brain. The brain is mostly fat, and so it's very important. We require fat. There's some fatty acids for certain parts, cofactors in the body that we cannot make. So there's a lower limit and recommendation. Okay, a little chemistry. Hang in there, a little chemistry lesson. Saturated fat is saturated with hydrogen. There's no double bonds. Monounsaturated has one double bond. Polyunsaturated, there's two, omega-6 and omega-3. Omega-6 has two double bonds. Omega-3 has three double bonds. Omega-3, three double bonds. Then there's this trans fat, which humans again said, you know what, I think these unsaturated fats are better for me, but I want to spread it on my toast. So we wanted to make kind of saturated fat from these, and so we created this trans fat. And I'll show, and this is margarine, and I'll show you later why this is not a good thing. Little diagram to try to conceptualize. This helped me. So fat is first split into saturated and unsaturated. Saturated is your animal products and your coconut oil. Unsaturated into poly and mono. Mono is your Mediterranean diet. So that is your olive oil, nuts, avocados. Poly is split into omega-3s, omega-6, and trans. Omega-3s, remember, not all fats created equal. We even treat high fat, high triglyceridemia with fish oil. So this is your flaxseed, your chia seed, your fish oil. Omega-6s, those are those pressed vegetable oils, the canola, the corn, the french fries, the processed foods. We now know that these in high amounts causes inflammation and heart disease. We are supposed to, as humans, we're used to eating monounsaturated and omega-3s in a 10-to-1 ratio. So we're supposed to eat these 10-to-1. We eat the opposite in the standard American diet. We eat about 10 omega-6s and very little mono or omega-3s. And that leads us to a very inflammatory diet and a very inflammation in your body. So that's causing a lot of chronic disease. And then there's this trans, again, this margarine. We now know that this is really bad. Causes insulin resistance, central fat accumulation, and inflammation. So truly, there was a Time magazine cover where it was like, butter is back. You know, and again, sometimes with environmental nutrition medicine, it's hard. It's hard to know because we don't have gold standard randomized controlled trials. And so sometimes, unfortunately, we try something new and realize human nature, or nature is actually smarter than we were. So we're kind of going back to that 1970. So why did I color code these? Well, we are supposed to focus on monounsaturated and omega-3s as kind of green fats. Mostly we should get these. Saturated omega-6s in the middle and avoid trans fats. So if you look, the current recommendation is about 30% saturated fat. You can still have saturated fat. This is about 2 pats of butter, 22 grams. So, and we can still have a little whole milk with 6 grams of saturated fat. So, so keep that in mind. Unsaturated fat, we should consume most of this in monounsaturated omega-3s and then omega-6s in the middles. So you can have, you know, a couple French fries here and there, but not a lot. And then trans fat avoids, okay? And so to me, this is one of the major things that's different from 1970. Americans are eating less fat because there's a concern about saturated fat was associated with increased cholesterol, LDL. LDL was associated with heart disease. We are now knowing that the causation in there, you know, too much saturated fat, yes, can cause that. But in countries like the Mediterranean, where they have low saturated fat, they eat more monounsaturated fat, like the olive oils and those things. But what did Americans do? They replaced it with carbohydrates. We were brainwashed to think that when things are fat-free, we're not going to become fat, right? So, so that's the misconception, and we're trying to go back and change that misconception. So we now know that carbohydrates cause a lot worse things than saturated fat ever did. Endocrine problems, it causes insulin release and all the endocrine problems. It causes all the dyslipidemia. It decreases HDL, increases LDL, increases triglycerides. So not just increasing LDL, it causes all of them. And it's less filling. I think this is where we started to have to count calories. You know, in 1970s, you ate a meal, you were full. You know, you ate your egg and your butter with toast and your fruit for breakfast and you were full. You didn't have to self-restrict. And now all of a sudden Americans had to self-restrict themselves because carbohydrates are not filling. Actually, studies show that when you eat more carbohydrates, it makes you more hungry because you get a sugar high, insulin is released, and then you get a sugar low, and it makes you hungrier than you ever will. And sugar-sweetened beverages is the worst. It's a double whammy because your body doesn't even recognize when you drink calories, it doesn't recognize that. It doesn't get full from that. So it still eats just as much as it did before, and actually more because of that sugar low. So this is my number one goal with most children is cutting sugar-sweetened beverages. If I can do that, my clinic, I actually have a stage 1 obesity clinic. I have a success rate of 30% because you know, that's the first thing I do is cut out that added sugar, and they, you know, because kids will regulate what they eat. It's this added sugar that they can't regulate. All right, protein, a little less controversial. Pretty straightforward, what it does and what it is, and how much we need. 30% of our energy, about 75 grams a day. I wanted to add just one thing about a micronutrient, calcium here. Calcium, we know kids need it. And dairy has been, for years touted because it is a practical source of calcium, vitamin D in the standard American diet, counteracts phosphorus in soda and low nutrients. The usual recommendation is low fat right now because the standard American diet is so high in added fats. But remember, saturated fat is better for you than some of those trans and vegetable oils and stuff. So, if we cut out those added fats, we can go back to that whole milk and kids can get full again. So, but that's down the road. But that's where I hope we eventually go with it, getting back to 1970 diet. But you can find calcium in other sources too. Because I'm having more patients with increased tolerance of dairy, I don't know if it's the feed they're feeding the cows, or there's something different with the proteins because children are having more GI problems, more skin problems, lots of problems from dairy. And when I do a trial, like a 4-week trial off of it, they do much better. So if you're seeing a lot more notes from us saying dairy free, that's why. I'm having a lot more eczema, more allergies, skin allergies, and when I take out dairy, they do much better. So that's why we're seeing it a lot more. Little thing, of course.
When you tell your eczema students to take milk out of their diet, do you mean liquid milk, or do you include cheese and cottage cheese?
I typically, so the question was if you include all dairy when you have allergy patients that you take off of dairy. What I do with my patients is I first let them just exchange their dairy milk for something like almond or coconut milk or flaxseed milk even, and keep eating their cheese and their yogurt because the bacteria sometimes can break down the proteins to be more tolerable. So that way, if they have an improvement even just taking out the drinking milk, then that's all I do. If they don't have an improvement with just taking out the drinking milk, the liquid milk, then I move on to start eliminating more. It's called an elimination diet. So, I start with the lowest elimination I can to see if I get a response and then keep escalating until I get a response. And sometimes down the road, not to get into it, but, if dairy's not working, then I add wheat because that's the second intolerant thing. And if that's not working, I add soy. So it's kind of an elimination diet that I do in my clinic. I have some integrative medicine training too, so I do a lot of environmental stuff such as nutrition, meditation, elimination diets, those things. So that's a whole nother talk I could go into, but maybe next year. So I wanted to say a little thing, and I'll talk later about sugar, but and it's not your fault, and hopefully the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act of 2010 will improve this. But keep in mind that chocolate milk has 25 grams of sugar, and that is a whole day's worth of added sugar for a child who is already eating Pop-Tarts and those kind of things that have in flavored yogurt. So I consider it a sugary beverage just like soda and juice, and I'll talk about juice later too. And the government solution to this, and I'm a little wary of it, is doing artificial sweeteners. Because kids are not drinking this white milk anymore, again, because their taste buds are so used to that super sweet soda flavor that milk doesn't taste like dirt to them. Whereas when I was a kid, milk was a treat. So unfortunately, we're having to do these things to get kids to even drink milk. But I worry about artificial sweeteners. Studies show it increases the overall sugar consumption because it's like snorting fake cocaine, when you drink artificial sweeteners, the brain thinks it's going to get it and then it doesn't, and then it craves it even more. And this is why, diet soda has been linked with obesity and more sugar consumption because the brain then wants it even more. And there's brain effects from the artificial sweeteners crossing the blood-brain barrier. Microbiome effects, so it actually kills good gut bacteria. In mice, when they feed them artificial sweeteners and then they test their gut biome, it's worse. It has more pathogens in it. So we need to just keep those in mind when we Again, to me, the solution is going back to 1970 and just having, plain milk. Yes, question?
So is it better for a child to drink the chocolate strawberry milk to get the vitamin D and the calcium, or not drink milk at all because they don't like calcium milk?
Yeah, so the question was, is it better to have them drink the flavored milk than no milk at all? My answer would be, if children just had white milk available, they would eventually drink it.
We talked about taking flavored milk out
Yeah.
of the lunch, choices, or whenever for some reason they're out of flavored milk and they only have the plain milk, that milk consumption goes
Right.
down at lunch. And so I guess maybe what you're saying is over time.
Hopefully they would get used to it. One of the schools that I talked to did is flavored milk on Fridays only. And I think that's a good compromise. And they even monitored, if you drank your white milk, and I hate to reward with food, it's not really rewarding with food, it's more of positive reinforcement. But if on their card they drank a white milk Monday through Thursday, then Friday they could get a flavored milk. So there's ways to, and I think of this like an addiction, when somebody's stopping smoking cigarettes, maybe they have to use, a Nicorette cigarette for a while or chew gum for a while until they get used to not, because it's a habit to drink flavored milk. So sometimes there's some transitions we need to do before we get back to 1970. But I worry about some of the solutions that are coming around with the artificial sweeteners. But thanks for that question. So, this is what goes through my brain I had to take all the biochemistry there is in undergrad and medical school. So these are all biochemistry pathways that your body does, and each of these dots are cofactors. And so when I hear the diets of children, Pop-Tarts and French fries and Coca-Cola, I think, how the heck is their body still going? How are they getting all these little dots? It breaks my heart. So, I explain it to children that you need all these little Legos. Like when you're building a Lego house, if you're missing one piece, then you can't build the house, and isn't that frustrating? Well, your body needs all those Legos. How do we tell families, because they don't know all these pathways? We give them templates, and this is where my plate comes in. I made my own, which also should be available to you on the website, based on the Harvard Healthy Plate. Because I'm having more dairy intolerance, I don't have dairy on there. I have calcium-rich foods, and I've added healthy fats on there. So, and little pictures that can help kids. And some other things that can help is, starchy vegetables in the carbohydrate thing. So, this is kind of how I conceptualize to families to help choose their meals. Logistics. How do you do all this? Well, this is an example of my daughter's day. And so, it can be done, with proper preparation and, whole grain wraps and snacks with veggies and peanut butter and stir fries and stuff. So that's kind of logistics of how we do it in our household. Physical activity, pretty straightforward. They're having less activity and more inactivity. So the recommendations is more activity, less inactivity, and getting through the barriers of how to get there. Again, it's environmental, having safe places, having programs, having things for them to do instead of screen time. So that's an important part. I do want to give a caveat here too about a myth. I have some families that with all of this, all these programs of Get Fit, or Play 60 and all these programs and Let's Go, it gives the stigma that obese people are lazy, and they already have that stigma. And yes, activity is good, and yes, they should be active, but that's not all of it, because the average American eats this many calories of added sugar a day, and you would have to do this much exercise, and no one's doing that every day. And so, these kids I had one kid that was swimming on swim team every day, and she still wasn't losing weight. It's because she was eating all this added sugar, and you can't work all that off. So, that caveat that it has to be both of them together. Okay, fruits and vegetables, pretty straightforward. Literally the healthiest thing people can eat. The most nutrients per calories, and literally the least thing that people eat. The average kid has 2 servings a day, and this includes juice and French fries. So pretty scary. Pretty scary things. So what's the solution? Every meal and every snack, a fruit or vegetable. I tell my kids, even if it's 2 baby carrots with your handful of chips, something to get those building blocks, those Legos. Little caveat about juice here. It's just the squeezed out water and sugar, and yes, there can be some vitamin C in that. But remember, to make a glass of orange juice, it's about 6 apples that are squeezed, and apples have about 5 to 6 grams of sugar in each one. And when you eat the whole apple, you get the fiber with it, which slows down the glucose absorption. So I consider juice as a sugary beverage because remember what do we treat low blood sugar with? Orange juice. So, we know it raises blood sugar really quick. So, I want to give that caveat in there that it should be, not an everyday kind of thing. Yeah.
What about flavored juice water? Like if you take a cut for strawberry and flavored water.
Yes. So she asked about flavored waters, even taking fruit and flavor them. That is a good stopgap. Again, it's like the Nicorette gum because unfortunately, just like white milk, kids don't like water anymore, plain water, where in its own right is so refreshing and tastes so good, but kids are so brainwashed and their palate is so sensitized. So it's a good stopgap. I try to stay away from artificial sweeteners, so there's a lot of flavored waters out there that have artificial sweeteners. So I do encourage them to do the flavored waters where they take, strawberries or watermelon or whatever and put it in the water and let it kind of dissolve a little bit. Because at least it's not, 6 apples being squeezed and made into a juice. At least it's like 3 or 4 strawberries that you get that flavor out of it. So great question. So sugar, I think this is the most high yield thing that we can talk about with children because it's one of the biggest things that have changed since 1970. And this is empty calorie sugar, not the sugar naturally found in fruit, because a couple reasons. One, there's fiber and vitamins with that slows down the absorption of this sugar. But second, nature is smart. Nature limits the amount of sugar. Like I said, an apple has about 6 to 8 grams of sugar in it. Humans made things supernatural, right? We like, this tastes good, we're putting 26 grams of sugar in this. So nature limits itself in a serving. There's usually not that supernatural amount of sugar in nature, in a nature whole food, in one serving of it. The average American eats 22 teaspoons or 90 grams or 360 calories, and the kid eats as much sugar in the first 8 years of life than we used to in a lifetime a century ago. So this is not good for the human race. And if you look at children, this is all children and adolescents, their number one source of calories is grain desserts and soda. So, and soda, I could talk a whole conversation on that, but soda is pretty much a poison. Phosphoric acid leaches the body of calcium. It changes changes the pH in the blood. It does a lot of things to the brain. It's just awful, and not to mention the sugar, the caramel color, the additives, the preservatives. The only thing healthy in it is water, I tell my kids. So just drink water, please. So this is scary that this is the number one source of what are contributing to kids' diets. Why is sugar a problem? It tastes good. Ooh, it's really bad in the body. It causes insulin release, so it's a metabolic thing, and this is where calories are not created equal. Yes, we're carbohydrate calorie to fat calorie, but carbohydrate calorie secretes insulin, which causes a lot of metabolic disarrangements in the body and imbalance. Triglyceridemia, high blood pressure, it causes a lot of bad things. It causes fat deposition. It's a storage hormone. Increased adiposity, dyslipidemia, high blood pressure. It has reduced nutrients with it. Inflammation, remember the problem with diabetes is glycosylated end products, which stick to molecules in the body and cause inflammation and white blood cells to come in. So when you have just sugar, you're drinking your orange juice and you get high blood sugar, this inflammation is going to occur. Cancer. We test for cancer with PET scans, which is a radio-labeled glucose monitor molecule, because we know cancer feeds on glucose. That's what it eats to grow. And so when it takes up a lot of glucose, that means that's cancer. And so when we're chronically feeding cells in the body that potentially could be cancer with sugar, we have an increased cancer rate. And cardiovascular mortality. So saturated fat's been linked with high LDL and cardiovascular disease. Sugar is actually linked with mortality from cardiovascular disease, and that's because of all these things: inflammation, high blood pressure, dyslipidemia, hyperinsulinemia. So it's pretty much a poison. So why do we still eat it? Again, it not only tastes good, but it tastes good because it causes dopamine release. Rats will preferentially choose sugar over cocaine. So I say to families, there's a reason your daughter is throwing a fit for sugar. It's because it's more addictive than cocaine. So, and you know, when you get that insulin release, then you get that sugar low, and that makes you crave it even more. So it's pretty much an addiction that our children are having. The American Heart Association, based on that cardiovascular mortality study, showed that people who consumed less than 10% of their calories from added sugar had a lower cardiovascular mortality. Therefore, they recommended no more than 100 calories from sugar. Each gram of sugar has 4 calories in it, so that's about 24 grams. 4 grams is in a teaspoon. That's usually eye-opening to the kids. I actually, when I go around to schools and talk, I take a kitchen scale and I measure out a teaspoon of sugar, and it's 4 grams. It's not 4 granules, it's 4 grams as a whole teaspoon. And so 24 grams is 6 teaspoons. If you look at a lot of your products, like this is a flavored yogurt, it has a whole day of that added sugar. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, yogurt tasted bad. So it did. My mom had to force me. So now it tastes like melted ice cream, right? I mean, there's even cheesecake kind and, you know, and key lime pie, and, you know, it's basically a dessert now. So, so be aware of that. So how do we take all that? And again, like I said, obesity is preventable and treatable with environmental modifications. But what is the treatment? What is the prescription? Well, it's identification of target health behaviors and influencing families to change those behaviors to healthier behaviors, despite an environment at the present moment that is easier to be unhealthy. So that's our difficult task. And this is not a diet. I do not prescribe diets. I prescribe healthy lifestyle change for permanent healthy lifestyle habits. That is our goal, setting little goals at a time to improve. Usually my first goal is the sugar, to decrease that. So the treatment, there's kind of different modalities, and we go along the treatment as a kid needs more and more escalated treatment. The first thing is to motivate change within families, and there's lots of ways that we do this. And literally we're breaking an addiction. Like I said, you know, there's lots of times there's stopgaps, like with flavored waters and those kind of things where we have to get them over and their palate desensitized from all that processed foods. Pharmacologic, not really in children much to decrease their appetite. And it's mostly in children, if we change their environment, they'll choose, most often they'll choose the healthier things. If that's all they have, I tell parents, they won't starve. If all they have is water and white milk, they won't die of dehydration, I promise. They will eventually, after the fits are over, they will eventually drink it. So, but it can be a tough period while they're going through this, you know, withdrawal, basically. I mean, they throw fits, they get upset. It's pretty tumultuous for a family, but very important to get through that period. Then when they start feeling the positive effects, like, you know, they have more energy, they're happier, they're less, you know, then they start, it really kicks in. There is metformin we use if there's hyperinsulinemia to kind of break that cycle of that hyperinsulinemia and that highs and lows. Surgery is a last resort because that does not solve the problem. The problem is mostly in here where it's a habit to eat unhealthy. That's where our psychologists really help us because these children have emotional eating. You know, sugar makes them happy. And then there's definitely the stigma with the bullying and everything, that depression that they're dealing with. So this behavioral component is a huge part of the treatment. So in the office, how do I do this with families? Use something called motivational interviewing, that I'll talk about later. You try to see what stage of change they are, and you're basically trying to progress them along this stage of change by setting goals, monitoring behaviors for change, reinforcing positive reinforcement, and reinforcing the goals, not the weight change. I just want them to get healthy, honestly, and get off the sugar. Don't reward with food. But I know I talked about, the 5th day on Friday having chocolate milk. So sometimes it's a balance. But what I don't want parents to do is say, if you eat your vegetables, you get your dessert, because then it shows that dessert is a desired end result. And then expect backfall. Habits are something what your brain has in their brain to. Things you do often, you don't want to have to think about every time. And so it's a habit for them to reach for the Pop-Tart, for the thing. So for a while, they're going to have to think harder to bypass that, to get the oatmeal. But after a while, that oatmeal becomes a habit where they don't have to think about it. So it's just getting them through that period of time, changing those old habits to new habits. And problem-solving barriers, and that's huge. And that's where we can work and collaborate as a team to help solve those barriers in the environment. So now a little bit about how you guys can help and how we can work together. And I'm not a school nurse, and I know it's got to be a difficult job to be responsible for thousands of children. So kudos to you and thank you for all you do. So I don't want to sound like any of this is, blaming or anything. I took most of this from this toolkit, which I hope you guys have access to. This is a great toolkit, and I wish we had this for the AAP or something, but this is amazing. There's logistical letters in there, there's templates, there's stuff online, so I highly encourage you to take a look at that. And most of this information is from this. So why you guys? Well, most kids in America see you guys. 52 million. More of you see you than pediatricians sometimes. So it's very important. And you guys have the healthcare background and the expertise, and you have the respect of the community. When my daughter comes home, Nurse Nee, I don't know if you guys know her, but you have Rachel Nee is my daughter's nurse, school nurse. So when my daughters come home and say, Nurse Nee said, I respect that, so I think we as a community and students respect that, and peers and staff at the school respect you. And so you have a unique opportunity and gift to be able to help that. And if we focus on children early in life, and this is where we're trying to advocate with policymakers, I know children don't vote, but they're our future, so we need to make policies that involve them. Because if we intervene early, we reduce their obesity rates, and the longer we wait, the harder it is. And I'm knowing that the older we get, the harder it is to stay healthy and to stay, if we catch them early when those habits are less ingrained and they're developing habits, then we can make a huge difference. Also, 31 children get their meals through school, and the majority of their meals, because unfortunately 1 out of 4 children are food insecure, and that's really sad. Childhood poverty is on the rise. Our income inequality, and that's a whole nother lecture, our gap is just increasing. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and it's affecting children a lot. 1 out of 3 are overweight or obese. So, when they're food insecure, it doesn't mean they're starving. It just means that they're eating, the really cheap food that's not healthy for them. So they can be overweight because they're eating that energy-dense food. And the school lunches can give a good role model for what they can do.
Or they can be a cautionary tale.
Yeah, so and I know there's so many barriers, and I know time and money is a huge one, and I'll get into that. But I think it hopefully needs to trickle down, but we can do what we can, and I'll show you some things that we can do together. So what has been proven in schools to actually help is curriculum. So education. Kids aren't born knowing how to be healthy, right? It's our job to teach them. They're born knowing what tastes good, but not what is healthy. So it's our job to teach them. The food supply, and that's what you alluded to, that we get needs to improve. Environment needs to improve, and support for teachers and staff because they're looking at us. Increased physical activity opportunities, education to the family, so when they go home, the family knows too. Big point here. None of these studies showed that the interventions cause negative effects. Once again, environmental medicine is based on common sense medicine, where if it hasn't proven to harm and it's proven to likely benefit, we recommend it. So really, there has not been proven harm from education. As long as we focus on the health benefits and not cosmetic things, there's no harm with teaching kids about healthy diet and being healthy. So one of the starts, and back to the AAPs, identification, prevention, and treatment. First step is identifying these students that need more help. And the intention is to focus on the health risks, not the cosmetic things. Surveillance is anonymous, and that's for like state or community surveillance, but screening is to identify students. And this typically needs to be done with caution to inform parents to take action afterwards. So it's recommended that each child over age 6 be screened yearly for obesity. Hopefully that happens with a well child check every year, but a lot of times if there's no vaccines, then it's hard to get them into the office, unfortunately, but we really encourage. I had a kid yesterday, a teenager that hadn't had a well child check in 5 years, and she had severe scoliosis. So it's not just, it's no one's fault. It's just, it's access to care. So and the earlier that we can pick some things up, the better. So as far as schools doing this, it's a cost versus benefit ratio for each individual school and community. One thing about screening is when we screen something, we have to be able to do something about it, right? So there has to be some kind of referral option or resources for families when you do find them. And assurance of privacy and confidentiality is an important part of this too. So a big piece of this is a system. You can't do this all on your own. So having a system in place is big. And this toolkit has actually some good templates and some good systems in there. So how to conduct screening, and again, I don't do this, but I got this all from here. So advanced, I just wanted to paraphrase this for you guys. So this is a paraphrase of this. Notifying the families is important. Communication is key, so that way that kid doesn't come home and say, nurse, so-and-so scheduled, did this to me. So advanced notification. For BMI, you basically need a height and a weight, and then the CDC growth chart. And there's templates in here for letters that have the growth chart on it that you can send home with families. Acanthosis is something, and this is caused by hyperinsulinemia. So this is when they're way gone. They're down. They actually need treatment. Because insulin's a growth factor, and it causes pigmentation. It stimulates pigmentation change. The important thing is to have them bend one way or another, and actually what you're looking for is actually the white lines, because then that means it's hard to pick up. If this kid had his head straight, it'd be hard to pick up because it just all looks dark, but it's those white lines that are important. This handbook talked a lot about screening for blood pressure, and again, this is an individual, community, and school preference. My preference as a pediatrician would be, I would assume this would be very difficult to do in a school setting, because I know just in my office, it's very hard for the nurse to get the right size of cuff, to get the kid to stay still, to get a good reading and what to do with that reading, and because blood pressure you have to plot for age, gender, height, percentile. It's kind of a complicated plotting, and although I know you can do it, I assume it'd be very difficult in a school setting. And when they have elevated blood pressure, they're probably going to have elevated BMI and acanthosis before the elevated blood pressure. So typically, hopefully, they come to see a healthcare provider before it gets to that. So you're welcome to, and kudos to you if you do screen for blood pressure, but I would assume that would be difficult to do. So you have to interpret and communicate that to family, what that actually means, because you guys are the expert, you're the healthcare expert. So, because and parents, a lot of parents, I'm surprised they don't realize that their kid is obese. But I think this is why. I mean, they see them every day, and so they see the gradual change, and they don't realize what's going on. Oh no, that's supposed to be easy to understand. So when to make referrals, this handbook talked a lot about, referring if they're greater than 85th percentile, if they have family history and of obesity and this and that. My preference as a healthcare provider would be any BMI greater than 85th percentile, so that way we can go through a more in-depth assessment of them. Definitely acanthosis. And I would really encourage every child to have a checkup every year so we can pick up things early. So having that on the handout that you send home, please do see your physician every year or healthcare provider every year. So there are programs or states that have done this. And the big thing is that there's less opposition than you would think. As long as you do these things, advanced notification, focus on the health risks and not the cosmetic results, and those and keep it confidential. That's huge. And there's tips in here on processes to do that. In Arkansas, it's a state mandate for 9 years, and they've seen a leveling off of their obesity rate. Again, because they're not coming to see their healthcare provider every year, but they see you guys every day. So that would be awesome. I wish Kansas would help with that too. So another big thing is prevention, and one thing on that is in promoting a healthy environment. Having school policies on things, just being an advocate in your own school. Role modeling's big. I remember I went and talked to a class, and the teacher had a big gulp of soda on the desk. And as I was talking, I could see start to put in that big gulp and hide it under the desk. So I guess it worked, but and it's not. And I tell people it's not anyone's fault. And if anyone out here, it's our fault as a society that we have not taught our society members this stuff, and that we've let consumerism run our life. So it's no one's fault. Again, I have a nutrition degree and MD, and it's still difficult for me. So that's big because the students notice. They look up to role models. So the treatment part, how we can all work together, and this handbook talks about individualized health plans, and I'm sure you guys know what this is. But I'll talk about the individualized health plans in a minute. And the big things is to set goals and to help with barriers, whatever barrier we can get through. Community resources, education, information, helping with comorbidities to try to control those, because if their asthma is not controlled, they're not going to run around at recess. So that's important. Individualized health plan, again, verbatim from here. Just wanted to summarize what it is, and there's an example in the toolkit. It's just a written kind of plan for goals and how to reach those goals. Motivational interviewing, this is a difficult thing for healthcare providers because in training we're taught, when we talk to families, we're the expert and we tell them what to do. But that doesn't work when it comes to change, to lifestyle interventions. We have to put it on them. They have to want to change. And the way we do that is this thing called motivational interviewing. And it's such a different thing for healthcare providers that there's even courses and apps, and the AAP has one called Change Talk, where the mom has a little red line above her, and the more you talk down to her, the more it lights up, and you're trying to get her to have green above there, like she's open to it. The big way I do this, I start off with that, it's not your fault. It's our fault as a society, it's not your fault. And I think that really opens them up a lot. And just listen and ask questions. What do you think about your health? What do you think about your diet choices? Get them to think, well, what do you think you could do better? Instead of this Coca-Cola, what do you think you could drink instead? That would be better. So kind of putting it more on them, as much as we can. Advocacy is the deliberate process of influencing those who make policy decisions. This doesn't just have to be with government. This can be within your own school, within your own community. And there's some tips on how to be effective with that. Okay, barriers. We all run into these, right? The big one is money. You know, it's cheaper and easier, and I know schools are strapped for money, and you know, we're doing what we can with our vote and everything, but you know, we're having, people are not realizing how important it is to intervene at an early age and how important children are to our future. But there are things that can help. There's foundations, the Kansas Health Foundation. There is government advocacy we can do, and there's grants we can get. Local PTAs, fundraising to get a salad bar or this or that. Time, I know you guys are covering more schools and doing more things and have more kids and, you know, are required to do more and more things. But I just urge you that to make obesity a priority. And I know you have a bunch of rules and regulations, but, you know, if you have the time and if you can with your principal and your policymaker to make this a priority, because it's affecting 2/3 of children, so or 1/3, so we should really make it a priority. And cultural things. Keep in mind that different cultures see weight and health as different things. That's why I try to focus on the health benefits instead of, we need to get your weight down. I usually talk about, we need to get you healthier so you don't get diabetes or heart disease. You know, we need to make healthier choices that reduce your risk for diabetes. So trying to focus on those things with some of those cultures can be important. Liability, and I'm definitely not a lawyer and definitely not, but this is verbatim from the toolkit, FERPA and HIPAA. So from this toolkit, I think FERPA replies to your records more than HIPAA does because you are hired by the school, but still you have to keep them private. And even talking, this surprised me, talking with fellow staff like teachers and principals, err on the side of caution and getting parents' permission for that. So that was unique, I thought. We can talk about our kid without parental consent. I know that. A lot of healthcare providers do not know that. You know, I try to spread the word as much as I can, but feel free to communicate. Email can sometimes be the easiest way to get a hold of us. So I urge you to find out emails of your local healthcare providers and phone numbers, and never feel bad about contacting us. I will do anything for a child, so I'm happy to help. Now, the caveat here is, as long as we are talking about something about a treatment plan for that kid in your school that affects your school, but since this is such a sensitive issue with parents, it's always better to communicate with them. And I heard somebody say that when they sign a HIPAA and a waiver at the beginning of the school year for all the students. I think that's a good way to go, because you know, I don't want students and parents coming in and I'll be like, oh, I talked to nurse so-and-so, and the parent being surprised about that. I don't think there's no liability in that, don't get me wrong, but I think, you know, it's always better to inform all parties involved that there's communication going on about their child. So I think that's key. That was the take-home message I got from reading in this toolkit. So.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because I'm hearing you say that in your practice, you're engaged in kind of a team approach to childhood obesity.
Yeah.
And the biggest barrier I have for those really high-end kids who are going to need, the parents are going to need to be involved, they're going to have to follow through with a care plan, they're going to need respectful intervention. If you don't happen to have that team approach in your community, it's very hard to refer them out. I feel like you're not just referring them into a black hole.
Right. So she made a comment about some communities not having healthcare providers that, you know, have this background and have this ability and want to intervene and do a team approach. I can understand how frustrating that can be, and so unfortunate, as you know, the medical system has failed obesity. It's not caught up and not helped enough, and unfortunately there's some providers that, you know, I had to learn most of this either from my nutrition degree or on my own. So, you know, it's no one's fault. It's our fault as a system and a society that we haven't.
Even
So.
if the doctor is wanting to
Yeah, so you talked about reimbursement and supporting, and that's again a system barrier. I can get around it. I usually find some actual medical diagnosis, and that's why I do labs a lot. I draw an insulin level even if they're not fasting, and to show that they have a hyperinsulinemia. That way I can bill for that hyperinsulinemia. So, and we're trying. The American of Pediatrics is trying, and there's actual obesity billing, CMEs and those kind of things. So we're trying, but feel free if you have healthcare providers that you think could, use some help with that. I'll give my email at the end of this, and I'm happy to share information. Yeah, I think it's always, and there's an example of a waiver in the toolkit. I think communication's always better. I don't think we would be held liable. I don't think so, but I think it's always better, And when I'm called from a school nurse about some specific like asthma or obesity or something, I'm happy to talk with them, but I always request that they tell the parents that we've talked. So that way, again, the kid doesn't come into my office and I'm like, oh, I talked to the nurse, so, because, parents don't like kids to be talked about, or, stuff to go on without them knowing, and I understand that. All right, so good. Thank you for that clarification. That was good. I learned something. So, logistics. From my standpoint, big ways we can work together, what I see. One, if you can help screen, if it's something in your system you're able to do, thank you. If not, please, I don't know how, send home letters or make sure at the beginning of that waiver, there's a big bold, please have a checkup every year. Parents think unless they need vaccinations or it's a new school, they don't need a checkup. And that's so unfortunate because it's so important. So I would advocate and really encourage that somehow to get on some of your beginning, your registration paperwork or something. That would be really helpful. Communicate to families and healthcare providers. We're a team in this environmental approach. So, I have my canned letter that I send home with families to take to their school nurse when I diagnosed a kid with obesity. Just there's an obesity action plan, just like a asthma action plan, that sort of thing. So that way we're all on the same page. A big thing that we can all help with is environment. And these can be little things. I know there's big policy things like this, the milk and those things that need to be worked on, but little things can make a big difference. I've had multiple examples, and again, it's no one's fault, because I can't imagine dealing with thousands of kids day in and day out. But, I had one family where the discipline was taking away recess for an obese kid, and I had to write a letter, run laps, something like that as discipline, something different.
The other side of
Yeah.
that is that the kids will be bad in the classroom and the teachers will assign wax.
Yeah.
Which connects activity to.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know which is better. She said sometimes assigning laps for bad behavior equates exercise with bad. That's a good point, a valid point. But I guess I'd rather get them moving than not. Or have this is a good one. If they're good, if they get a sticker every day or whatever, at the end of the week they get open gym time or something like that. Extra movement time. So, and if they're bad, yeah, it's difficult. I know, again, you guys have a very difficult job because you're sending messages to children for the rest of their lives. So that's very difficult. So drinking the chocolate milk and the juice at lunch, allowing the kids to take a bottle of water for lunch. Most kids nowadays have a bottle of water on their desk, and letting them take that to lunch can be a good step. And like I said, everyone's concerned about the calcium and vitamin D in the standard American diet, and I realize that if they don't drink the plain milk, but there's lots of other sources of calcium, and I tell all my patients to take a multivitamin every day. So that way, if they don't get what they need, there's like a little assurancy in there. The vending machines are a big factor. My daughter, I've taught her from the beginning what is healthy. In her first day of middle school last year, she came home and said, they sell Monster drinks in the vending machine. And her eyes were just like, Mom, my friends are buying Monster drinks and me drinking Monster drinks. So I made a phone call. Thanks. Sorry. It's no one's fault again because it turns out they actually get money from Pepsi and stuff to have that there. And this all blows my mind. The system is so broke. But anyways, so I know that's difficult, but there's fundraising options. Whole Foods has a salad bar grant. There's all kinds of things out there if you want to. I actually run in the elementary school that my daughters don't go to anymore. We do a gardening club where they grow some vegetables and stuff, and I bring in extra if they don't grow them. So we can have carrots at the end of the year. Woo, you grew that. Good job. So that's there's ways around it, but we do what we can. And then this is a big thing too, rewarding with the unhealthy food. My daughter would come home and say, we get a cupcake, party at the end of the week, or an ice cream party, or a pizza party, or snow cone machine comes, or cotton candy machine comes if at the end of the week. And again, it's that rewarding thing, let's do extra recess or something. So, little things like that, we can encourage our staff and just educate. So lots of resources out there. Local resources, we have local farmers market that take SNAP. It actually doubles SNAP. So your SNAP counts for double at farmers markets. Awesome. Take home message, I think this is the number one problem. I think it should be our number one priority. Environmental changes with sugar and highly processed foods, and help join the fight. And lots of people have helped in my teaching. My two best friends, one of them is an integrative medicine doctor from residency, and one of them is a pediatric endocrinologist. So I get a lot of knowledge from them. Please feel free to contact me if I can help in any way. I'm happy to help. And this is an example of a healthy lifestyle questionnaire I use. It's from the AAP and the 5210 Let's Go. It's pretty quick and easy. So, all right. Do we have time for maybe?
Yeah, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, 1 or 2 questions, yes.
Is there a specific brand of multivitamin that you would recommend that's?
Yeah, she asked about specific multivitamin. I say to parents, whatever they will take. I let them take a little bit of sugar, a little bit of red number 40 or whatever, if it means that they're getting their calcium and vitamin D. So I say at least 800 of calcium a day and at least 400 to 600 of vitamin D. Those are the most deficit that we have in the kids' diets right now is calcium and vitamin D. So that's why I focus on that. I have some kids that only take chocolate chewy vitamins and some, I lean towards, you can get unnatural stuff if it's just in a little vitamin and you get vitamins. Benefit to risk ratio. Yeah.
What this handbook that you were talking about, where exactly is that, where we can find that more information?
I think, Katrina probably is able to answer that.
This toolkit is the School Nurse Childhood Obesity Toolkit. It's available from NASN. So if you log on to NASN or just Google search NASN, it'll come up National Association of School Nurses. Go to their bookstore. There is a decreased rate if you are a member. So you get a reducing cost if you're a member.
What's the name of the agenda?
The School Nurse Childhood Obesity Toolkit from the National Association of School Nurses.
It comes with a DVD too.
Like 2015, isn't that like the second
Sorry.
edition? Not Ox Press.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's $42 if you're a member, and I'm guessing $52 or so if you're a non-member.
And it has a wonderful DVD
That-
you have all your forms on.
yes. That's awesome.
Xerox it a million times if you want to after you buy it.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't tell anybody, but yes.
We didn't hear that.
We didn't hear that.
I again, kudos to the School Nurses Association. This is huge because, that's another barrier is there's resources all over the place. So having it in one spot is amazing. And I'm currently working with the Kansas chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics to do something like this because this inspired me. You know, I was like, we need this. So, all right, well, good luck and thanks for all you do to help kids.